Today, I want to show you how you can set up native RevenueCat in-app purchases and in-app subscriptions inside of your lovable mobile application. So let's get right started with that because it's super simple. So first of all, you can get the pre-made Lovable prompt on lovable.despia.com. So you can just copy paste this into Lovable and it'll set everything up the way it needs to be set up. That prompt is 100% battle tested and it'll work all the time. So now that you have the prompt, we need to set up our RevenueCat account. So if you just go to RevenueCat.com, you can just create an account over there, follow their onboarding instructions, connect that with your Apple developer account. It's just a few clicks. With the Google developer account, also just a few clicks. That's a super simple process, and they have great videos and documentations helping you go through that process. So I'm assuming you already have that set up because it's super simple. So let's get this now set up with our Lovable app. Now, we will need to use a tool called Despia to ship our Lovable app as a native application. So you're going to go to RevenueCat and you're going to go to API keys, and you now have your SDK API keys. And I have one example as an example here for Apple, right? And that's public, so I don't mind showing it. And I'm going to copy this public API key, and it has to go in here for the iOS public API key. Right? And then the same thing for Android if you're building an Android application, but it's one-to-one the same process. So we're just going to do iOS today. And then you do the same for Android. And then you just go to project settings, you get your project ID, and then you only need to go into Despia, dump your project ID under the global project ID. That's the same for iOS and Android. That is per application. And then you just rebuild your application that is linked with Lovable using Despia. Now, the way you link that is very simple. You just put your Lovable URL inside of the app start URL, so it uses that as a resource to get your application files over the air remotely. And then you just rebuild your application, publish it. I already have it set up, and I already got it inside of here on test flight, so I don't need to do this, but you would just republish it because you made some changes to the native binaries, so it needs to have a fresh update to the App Store. And if you want to learn how to connect that with the App Store, we'll also have a video about that inside of our documentation. So now inside of the Lovable app, we need to use our prompt. They already have a nice interface here that is not functional yet. But what I want to do is I want to add this functionality to the button. So we'll just wait till the preview is ready, and I'm just going to select the button, right? And I'm going to take my Lovable prompt that we have in the Despia documentation, which says add native mobile monetization by using add to my app using the Despia SDK from, and then it uses the npm.js link. First, install the package, npm install Despia native, then import it, import Despia from Despia native, create a payment system that uses RevenueCat URLs, like with our deep links here, to handle purchases through Apple App Store and Google Play billing, right? And then add some buttons with the plans and all that stuff. Now, I'm assuming you already have some products created here, or the prompt is assuming that. So we need to make sure that when we are in RevenueCat, we already have products created in our product catalog. So if you go on product catalog, you can go to products and you'll be able to see I already have two products. One is a subscription, one is a purchase. When you are in the process of testing in-app purchases, I highly suggest you to work with one-time purchases, lifetime purchases, and make them consumable, meaning you can test them multiple times in a row, where with a subscription, you can only test it one time. You can't resubscribe for testing because it'll say, hey, you already have a subscription. So when you're testing, use in-app purchases that are consumable, because you can purchase them, because when you're testing, you're probably going to test it like 20 to 30 times, so you don't always have to cancel and then let it expire and all that kind of stuff. So it lets you test and iterate faster, especially when it comes to working with Lovable. So we are going to use this purchase here and this product ID from the store. So what we're going to do now is we're going to copy the prompt here and put it into Lovable. So I'm going to copy this prompt that we have on the Despia documentation, and I'm going to go into Lovable, and I'm going to paste this inside of here. And now where we have the products, I'm going to put my product in here. I'm going to say product, and I'm going to take the product ID. So I'm going to copy this here from RevenueCat for this product. And then I'm going to go back to Lovable, and I'm going to paste this inside of here. So let's do like product ID. Perfect. And now I'm going to send this prompt to Lovable. You can extend it and all of that. Now, one thing that while Lovable is working that we want to take a look at is how to set this up. So let's understand how this SDK actually works by scrolling a little bit more down in the documentation. So Despia essentially acts as a bridge between your web application and all of the native SDKs, Face ID, also RevenueCat, smart widgets, all the stuff that's native to the mobile hardware. But you need that bridge to communicate between those because Lovable can't directly communicate with RevenueCat. So Despia is that native runtime that makes the communication possible, meaning turning JavaScript into Swift or Java Kotlin and vice versa, and then getting data from JavaScript, from Java, Kotlin, and Swift back into a JavaScript variable into your Lovable app. So the way you install that is by doing npm install Despia native. That adds a dependency to your Lovable project with the native Despia functions, being able to call them in a type-safe environment. And then you need to import that on the page that you try to use the native Despia functionalities. So the Despia function becomes available. So we're doing import Despia from Despia native. And then you call the Despia function with those deep link URLs in here, which trigger native app schemes, kind of like app links in the app that then, register native functionalities to happen. That's how it works under the hood. So then you're doing RevenueCat purchase, you put your external user ID in here so you can identify the user because you should know who purchased, right? And then you just put your product inside of here that you're trying to sell to the user. And then when you get your RevenueCat webhook back, because that is how RevenueCat will tell you if there was a purchase, if someone canceled, if something happened, right? That webhook will include the external ID, which we registered in here. So then we can look that external ID up when we receive the webhook, the event on our server, and then grant access or remove access to that specific user ID, which should be the primary key of our user record in our database. And that is essentially how it works. And then, of course, you need to set up the backend parts, as mentioned in here, which RevenueCat will send a webhook to your backend, meaning your backend needs to have a webhook that receives all RevenueCat events, which Lovable can help you build. And when you receive those events, you then, use the external _ID to get the primary key of the user record to grant, remove, or revoke access. And then to update the UI, you can then go from your server and send a WebSocket, which is communication from the backend to the front end, to update the UI saying, hey, thank you for your purchase, right? And we have also the documentation attached here for RevenueCat to also take a look at that. So in RevenueCat, they have great documentations explaining you step by step how to set up their webhooks depending on the backend that you're using. And if you are looking into setting them up, you can just simply go to RevenueCat, go on go on integrations, and then you can go on webhooks, and you can go on add new configuration. You can name your webhook, you can put your URL, you can put an authorization key inside of here to make it extra secure. And then you can look for your events, right? And you have all the events: initial purchase, renewal, product change, cancellation, billing issue. You can get all that kind of data to your workflows, to your APIs on your backend so that you can build automations to really capture every step of that billing cycle. That's why RevenueCat is so great, because doing that with the store APIs is an absolute nightmare. So that's why we integrate with that, and that's why we give you access to that inside of your Lovable app through the Despia native runtime. So let's check back at Lovable. I pitched this quite well today. So we use the chat, so it did build it. I need to explain the backend. I'll need to explain the backend requirements before implementing this mobile monetization system. For native mobile monetization, with RevenueCat integration and Webhook handling, you need backend functionality to process payment confirmations from RevenueCat webhooks, manage user subscription states, send notifications to the front end when purchases complete. Yes, that's correct. Handle user authentication and product management. Since this requires backend APIs and webhook processing, you'll need to connect your Lovable account to Supabase. So the prompt that we gave you will, give you the whole thing. It will set up everything. Now, because this is a video and we are looking to understand the principle and how this works, I will say, thanks, but let's just create the client side, meaning no backend, the client side implementation of the RevenueCat wrapper through Despia and use the hard-coded user ID of lovable user. And let's send that. So now we have a hard-coded example so we can examine this for this video. But then, as you can see, if you connect Lovable with your backend, you implement login with Google, login with Facebook, login with email, and all that stuff that would be way beyond a 15-minute video. You will then have the full example working, and because Lovable is full stack, integrates very nicely with Supabase, it can just do everything for you based on that prompt, which is pretty cool. So now, as you can see, it'll implement the client-side RevenueCat integration through Despia with a subscription. And now, as we can see, if we look at the code, it is doing the purchase for this sample user ID, which is Lovable user. It's hard-coded inside of here, right? Let's open this in the code editor. Let's open that code here. Okay. And as you can see, it is doing the Lovable user. It's importing Despia from Despia native. That is correct. And then this also looks correct. So in regards of the product ID, we need to take a look at that one. The product ID should be also hard-coded. So let's go back to our product catalog and let's take this product ID. And let's tell Lovable for testing, just use this product ID, right? And then we'll be able to test this on our native device and verify on the RevenueCat dashboard that the purchase was successful. Again, it works exactly the same for in-app purchases like it does for in-app subscriptions. But even if you're selling a subscription, I would suggest to first start with a consumable in-app purchase product just to get the webhooks working, just to get the client-side JavaScript working or React code working. Because it's way more convenient to test if you just do consumable products, because you can test them over and over and over and over again. You can make like 50 checkout tests a day, where with a subscription, even though it's a test, you have to follow all those rules. You got to cancel to resubscribe again and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's making it way more convenient just doing consumable one-time purchases, in-app purchases when it comes to testing. And then once you got that nicely set up, your webhooks, your WebSockets, the backend integration is all working, then you migrate that to be the subscription for testing, because there's then less movement needed. So as you can see, we got the product ID, and then we handle purchase. It will run purchase. Perfect. This code looks fine to us. A few things to verify. Make sure it imports Despia from Despia native, that there is a user ID available, even if it's just hard-coded, but it should ultimately come from your authenticated user session. And then we make sure that this is calling the Despia SDK with the correct deep link command here, inserting the user ID dynamically, as well as the product ID. Now the product ID will come through here, which is this function handle purchase. And now we're using an actual one that exists. Always make sure that when you're testing that you're actually using one that exists. That will save you quite some frustration when it comes to debugging and testing. So I think we're doing well. Let's save all those changes here. And let's see. we have premium and basic. I think both of them will trigger the same one. So let's publish our project here. Let's update it. And the nice thing is, because Despia has updates over the air, once you have your application deployed and you make a change inside of Lovable, it doesn't use any credits to republish, rebuild, and redistribute the application. You don't need to wait 10 days for the app review to approve your application. Even if you change your paywalls, your in-app purchases, all that stuff, you can make UI changes immediately using updates over the air, which is pretty cool. So you get that as a big benefit. So now let's open my iPhone. As you can see, I can test the application right here through Test Flight. So let's open the application here. And because I'm still already open on it, I just got to close it and then open it again through Test Flight. Let's click on there. It'll take a little bit. I'm mirroring my iPhone. It's not always the best experience. Look at that. I apologize for that. Okay, and now it's starting the application. And as we can see, we can subscribe now. I think I should be able to click on subscribe now. And there you go. I'm doing my in-app purchase. So I'm doing it. It's a one-time charge. And then I can just purchase that again. And now that in-app purchase was successful. Now, one thing to note how the RevenueCat SDK works, if I'm now trying to subscribe again, it says this operation is already in progress for this product because, out of the box, the RevenueCat SDK wants to prevent your users from purchasing the same product because maybe they purchased it and then the confirmation message took a second to occur. And what happened here? Took a second to occur and, they purchase it again. And then you have to deal with refunds. You get angry customers because they thought you tricked them and double charged them, which, didn't happen actually. So what they're doing out of the box is they're restricting that. The way you reset that after you showed proper UI, you will have a button on there that will just say, hey, now go to your dashboard. You just reload the page or run the native functionality in Despia to do an app reset. That'll clear all the RevenueCat sessions, all the processes, restart from scratch, and then they'll be able to click the button again and do another purchase if you want people to purchase multiple times in a row. But out of the box, it prevents that. So it's, spares all the negative user feedback that you would get from, having it let them purchase, because sometimes people then say, hey, they tricked me, I didn't know, and I give you bad reviews, right? But if you want to do the purchase again for testing, just close the application, right? And then open it again, as you can see here, and then you just do subscribe now. And then as you can see, you can purchase that again. So I can purchase that again, just like this, and then it was purchased because it takes a second, right? So before the message happens, they could technically click on it again, but then it will say the operation is already in progress for this product. You could reload the page, that will clear it, or you close that, open the application again when you're testing yourself, and you'll be able to do the purchase again, test another time. And then we did some tests now. Okay, we can now go to RevenueCat, go to our overview, and we will see that there, a few seconds ago, those two purchases just happened. That's why I like testing with consumable products, because they allow you to just test it by just closing and opening the app again to really make sure that your webhooks and all that stuff is working, so you don't have to deal with subscriptions and cancel your own subscriptions. It's going to make the testing process and the initial implementation way faster and way simpler. So that is how you get native RevenueCat in-app purchases for iOS and Android inside of your Lovable application using the Despia SDK with a native runtime that Despia provides that can be easily configured in our web editor with one-click publishing, one-click key store generations, full code export. We don't gatekeep your key store, right? It's all yours to keep and use. You can migrate away from it anytime, no vendor lock-in. So it has all the beautiful benefits of Lovable, full code exports, no janky spaghetti code. It's actually human readable code. You could technically export the code from Despia and go into Xcode and tune it and really mod it and go crazy on it if you want to. Full source code ownership, and that is how you get your lovable application with native superpowers into the App Store. And I can't wait to see you in the next video where we will be going over even more exciting native functionalities and how you can add them inside of your lovable application. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for considering Despia. And I can't wait to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.